say Rabbi Aaron Halberstam carefully. It says Rabbi Aaron Twersky, and that's Rav Henkin who wrote it. So how do I know it was meant for Rabbi Aaron Halberstam? Simple. Because on the back of the check, Rabbi Aaron Halberstam endorsed it using the surname Halberstam, not Twersky, because that wasn't his surname. Full disclosure, Rabbi Aaron Halberstam's mother was Yocheved Rivka Twersky, the daughter of Mordechai Dov Twersky of Ornishtaifel Kalenkovich. But be that as it may, to be perfectly frank, I find it very hard to believe that Rav Henkin, who is a blue blood Litva and clueless about Chassidish Yichud and Mishpachology, would have known who Rav Aaron Halberstam's mother was, and would have therefore have confused the surnames when he wrote the checkout. But I digress, as I tend to do. Please forgive me. Where was I? Oh, yes. Yisrael Twersky arrived on his own to New York on the SS Berlin. He could have been a Chernobyl Twersky. So why do I think he's Schwarz? I'll tell you why. Because when his family arrived, his wife and 3 sons, their first names are all exactly the same as Yisrael Issa Schwarz's wife and children's first name. And guess what? Their surnames are all Schwarz, not Twersky. Take a look at the ship manifest that shows the family's arrival. Here's a close-up of the names as they appear on the manifest. And then, just 2 years later, in the 1930 US Census, there they all are. Take a look at the names. Yes, Hannah Gittel's name is reduced to just Hannah, but the kids' names are the same as they were. Miraculously changed to Twersky. In 1934, Yisrael Issa petitioned for immigration, giving the name Israel Twersky, and in his 1936 Declaration of Intention, he's also Israel Twersky. There's no Schwarz in there. But now, take a look at Yisrael Issa's 1939 naturalization document. Take a look at the close-up of his name. Do you see that? All of a sudden, he's not Israel Twersky. He's Israel Schwarz. And take a look at a close-up of his signature. Same handwriting. Now he signed himself Israel Schwarz. The cat is well and truly up to the back. Although, as you can see on the document, he is still claiming to have been born in Chernobyl, which was a lie. He was born in Lublin. Now look at his U.S. immigration admission card, issued on January 30th, 1950. Do you see that? It says Israel Schwarz Twersky. And take a look at the signature on his oath of allegiance document. Once again, he signed his name as Israel Schwarz Twersky. Okay, you may be wondering, why does any of this matter? Who cares if some random guy, immigrant from Poland, wants to change his name from Schwarz to Twersky? If it floats his boat, what difference does it make? Surely there were thousands of people who altered their names when they arrived in the United States. New life, new name. Why bother even talking about it? The answer is simple. Because none of those thousands of name-changing folk paraded themselves around New York, claiming to be the scions of great Hasidic dynasties. And presumably, Yisrael Schwarz Twersky did it because he expected handsome payments for his blessing and for appearing in a shul and staying there for Shabbat. Take a look at these adverts, the Jewish newspapers, in the late 20s and 30s. Celebrity rabbinic luminary, the holy Polnitzer Chernobyl Rebbe of Yisrael Twersky. He even signed onto a promotional advert for Manischewitz Matzah, along with many rabbis, as Rabbi Yisrael Twersky. Now, all the other rabbis signed using their real names. He used a fake name. What kind of rabbi does that? Yisrael Isser even created a business card promoting himself as the Yisrael Twersky of Kosher. His star shone very brightly, and he reaped the rewards. On January 20th, 1934, the Yiddish newspaper Der Tag published a letter from Yisrael Isser in his guide, in which he extolled the virtue of Saratoga Liebfrauen, which he said brought him from a month-long bout of painful rheumatism. In another article, this one in English, Yisrael Isser's visit to the Beis Tfilah Shalosh Sudus was enthusiastically promoted. Rabbi Twersky is considered one of the greatest Hasidic rebbeim of our time, the newspaper gushed. Residents, tourists who wish to have an Oineg Ruchni are urged to be present. So, I guess you're wondering, why did he do it? This charade must have been totally exhausting. And at any moment in time, he might be exposed. Someone who knew him from Poland could appear out of nowhere and say, hey, 1 second. That's not the Koznitzer Rebbe. That's Shuli Schwartz from Lublin. We used to play marbles together on Krakowski Predichman Street. Can you imagine the pressure? Thinking that that could happen at any moment in time? Why would he do that to himself? Every day, for years and years, week after week, day after day, pretending to be someone you're not. And it's not as if he was a hermit hiding at home. He was in the public eye, a synagogue rabbi, and an itinerant preacher. It's truly unbelievable. How did he do it? Why did he do it? The answer to these troubling questions can be found in an autobiographical book written by Yisrael Isser's son, Jacob. The book is called The Sound of the Wall, and it was published in 1959, 5 years after Yisrael Twersky died. Jacob doesn't mention anywhere in the book the fact that his father, Rav Twersky, was not in fact Rav Twersky at all. But the autobiography does contain a tragic piece of information, which is the key that unlocks this whole story. Let me explain what I mean by quoting a review of the book that appeared when it came out. The Sound of the Wall was reviewed by the New York Times, and this is what the reviewer said. This autobiography could be many a man's life. The hero grew up in Brooklyn, went through high school, then City College, where he became a member and captain of the wrestling team, took postgraduate work at Columbia University, became a teacher in the history department at City College, met a young woman, fell in love, was married, and had a daughter. The only difference is that Jacob Twersky was completely blind. When he was 4 years old, a boy in Poland, he was stricken by scarlet fever, and complications caused him to go blind. At first, he could see light and shadow, but by the age of 12, he had stopped seeing light, and the world had turned to an empty grayness. That's the key to the whole story. Jacob describes how he began to lose his sight, and how his father, desperate to help him restore his sight, resolved to immigrate with his wife and sons to America, where the doctors were far more advanced than they were in Poland. Yisrael Isser was sure that in America there would be a doctor who would be able to do something, anything, for Jacob. But how would an anonymous immigrant rabbi who only spoke Yiddish pay for all the medical expenses? Doctors cost money. Medical procedures cost money. And money doesn't grow on trees. Jacob doesn't address this topic in his book, The Sound of the Wall. But I think I know the answer. If Shuli Schwartz from Lublin moved to America, he would sink without a trace. But if Rabbi Yisrael Twersky, scion of Chernobyl and Kozny, the descendant of every Hasidic great from Russia and Poland, even of the Baal Shem Tov, moved to America, he would take the country by storm. People would pay to see him, and they would give him money to pray for them, and they would listen closely to his speeches, and the money he earned from all of this would be used to pay for Jacob's medical bills. That's what happened. Not that it helped. Sadly, Jacob went blind anyway. But by then, it was too late. The revered Koznitz Chernobyl Rebbe couldn't suddenly drop his cover and say, "Sorry, guys, it was all a big mistake. I'm actually Yisrael Schwartz. I was having you all on. I'm neither Chernobyl nor Koznitz. I'm just an ordinary chap from Poland, masquerading as a member of a bunch of famous families because I wanted to raise money to pay for my son's medical bill." I mean, how do you think that would have sounded to those who had been fooled? Jacob writes of an elderly couple who walked for miles every Shabbos just to spend the last hour of the holy day with a man they knew as the Koznitzer Chernobyl Rebbe. They wanted to bask in his shadow because their ancestors had followed his ancestors, except that they weren't his ancestors because he made it all up. But once Yisrael Issa was caught up in the con, he could never change back to who he really was. It had to be his persona for the rest of his life. And while his wife must have known the truth, his kids never knew. And as far as they were concerned, they were the children of a highly pedigreed Hasidic Rebbe. But now I have another question. How did Yisrael Issa Schwartz fool the monastery Rebbe, Rabbi Yeshua Heschel Rabinovich, who was a relative of the Twersky, into believing that he was Yisrael Twersky? Surely the monastery would have probed this man's credentials, and even the most basic questions would have sent up red flags and set off alarm bells, alerting him to the fact that the guy was an imposter. And yet, the monastery not only considered Rabbi Yisrael Twersky his relative, he even wrote a complimentary endorsement of his Sefer Einei Yisrael. How do you figure that one? Even more puzzling, Reb Sholem Yosef Twersky of Trisk, New York, who was a real bona fide Chernobyl descendant, invited Yisrael Issa, the imposter, to spend Shabbos with him and treated him like a close relative. Here is the advert promoting the Shabbos, and you can see the Trisker Rebbe's name clearly on the advert. How was that even possible? Didn't the Trisker Rebbe smell that something was off about this guy? Although, you've got to give it to Yisrael Issa. He had incredible guts. Imagine pretending to be someone's cousin when you're not and spending Shabbos with them. It's horrifyingly awful. To understand how it was even possible the genuine Twersky family members felt Yisrael Issa, I think you need to understand that in an age before the phenomenon of widespread information and the frequent easy travel, it was perfectly possible to have distant relatives you didn't really know much about and never saw, and one day you could meet them somewhere and they could tell you that they are your third cousin or whatever, and you'd believe them. Even today, it's possible you could meet someone and they say, "Hi there, I'm the great-grandson of your grandfather's second cousin. Are you really going to check your family tree with a fine-tooth comb to see if that person is lying?" You would take it at face value, and that's it. The monastery Rebbe not himself descended from the Twersky family. His daughter Fega married Reb Sholem Yosef Twersky of Trisk in 1903, but she died a month after the wedding. And then Reb Sholem Yosef remarried to Yem Terezel Svilovich. 20 years later, after experiencing a terrible pogrom where the family lived, in which two of Reb Sholem Yosef's daughters were killed, Chavalea Batsheva, and in the midst of the terrible upheaval caused by the Russian Civil War, Sholem Yosef moved to New York together with his former father-in-law, the monastery Rebbe, who had lost a son in the same pogrom, among 120 other victims who were killed. Trisk was almost 300 miles away from Chernobyl. So even if Yisrael Issachar said he was born into a novel, Rabbi Shlomo Yosef wouldn't question it. The sticky point of Yisrael Issa being a kohen would be explained away as him having taken his mother's surname, which was quite common in Russia, done to confuse the authorities with regard to military conscription. Yisrael Issa could tell his quote-unquote cousin that his mother was a Tversky and that she had married a kohen, but he was still a Chernobyl descendant. I have a letter Yisrael Issa wrote to Reb Chanoch Heinrich Tversky, the Maliner Rebbe of Chicago, who might recall was Reb Osher Zilberstein, the evangelist brother, the brother of Reb Osher's first wife. The letter, which opens with Yisrael Issa referring to Reb Chanoch Heinrich as his dear relative, accompanied a copy of Eine Yisrael that Yisrael Issa mailed to him. How did he get away with it? Simple. Because the Maliner Rebbe lived in Chicago and probably never met Yisrael Issa in his life and would never suspect that someone called Yisrael Tversky, who claimed in a letter to be his relative, was in fact a bare-faced impostor. Interestingly, a few years after moving to New York, Yisrael Issa stopped using the title Chernobyl Rebbe and referred to himself on his business cards and his stationery as the Koznitzer Rebbe only. Presumably, this was after the arrival in 1934 of the real Chernobyl Rebbe, Reb Shlomo Shmuel Tversky, whose parents had both been born Tversky, who had lived in Chernobyl for most of his life, and who lived and breathed the Chernobyl dynasty in every facet of his being. Shlomo Shmuel would have known the Yisrael Issa was fake in a minute, under a minute. So Yisrael Issa avoided him, and even after Reb Shlomo Shmuel died, and his son Reb Yaakov Yisrael took his place, Yisrael Issa refrained from making any further public references to his Chernobyl connection. And then, after 1942, when the Koznitzer Rebbe of Yisrael Elazar Hopstein arrived in New York, Yisrael Issa quietly dropped the Koznitz title as well. You remember Yisrael Elazar Hopstein, right? He was the Yablona Rebbe's partner in the creation of Kfar Chassidim during the 1920s, after which he went to Paris before escaping from the Nazis and making his way to the United States. There was no way Yisrael Issa would have been able to fool the real Koznitzer Rebbe. So he didn't try. The letterhead he used after 1942 made no mention of either Koznitz or Chernobyl. And it is not surprising that without having the status of a famous Hasidic title, Yisrael Issa faded into obscurity, and then, after a few short years, he suddenly died following a short illness. It was January 1954, and he was 56 years old. Yisrael Issa's gravestone revisits all of his ridiculous ancestry claims. His second name, Issa, is missing, although he is referred to as Hakohen. Presumably, his children never even knew he had a second name, but they did, of course, know that they were Kohanim, and most probably they took the details of his ancestry from the introduction to his book and then included it in the text for his gravestone. And why wouldn't they? They had no reason to disbelieve any of it. More recently, though, in the past few years, when Yisrael Issa's family has been challenged regarding their fanciful claimed ancestry, they have rejected any suggestion that Yisrael Issa was a fraud. They claim to have a private document that shows just how they are descended from all the great Hasidic Rebbes, but they adamantly refuse to share that document with anyone. For good reason, because it would never stand up to close scrutiny. Last July, I was in Boca Raton, where one of Yisrael Issa's grandchildren lives, and I sent them an email while I was there. This is what I wrote. Dear ... Please excuse this intrusion. I am a history research buff who regularly presents curious anecdotes of Jewish history to a wide audience of listeners and viewers via YouTube and SoundCloud. I have been informed that you are a grandchild of Rabbi Israel Tversky, who was a rabbi in Brooklyn and claimed descent from various Hasidic dynasties. These claims have been dismissed as misinformation. Although Rabbi Twersky's rabbinic qualifications have never been questioned, his credentials as a Hasidic Rebbe have. I was wondering if you could shed any light on this, perhaps share any relevant information that might clear up this enduring historical puzzle. Although I live in Beverly Hills, California, I happen to be in Boca for a couple of days and would be delighted to spend some time with you if you are able to meet me. I look forward to hearing back from you at your convenience. They never responded. Perhaps I will hear from them when this presentation goes live on YouTube. Incidentally, I have Yisrael Isser's rabbinic credentials. On the face of it, they seem first class. I don't have his original smicha certificates, but I do have the translations that he sent out so that he could obtain his Board of Rabbis certification. There are two smichas, one from Rabbi Klatskin, the Lubliner Rav, who is a Talmud Chacham of epic proportions, on par with the Rogatchover for his photographic memory. He later lived in Yerushalayim. I've spoken about it in the past. I think the Klatskin smicha might be real, even though Yisrael Isser's surname has been changed in the translation from Schwarz to Twersky, and the name Isser is missing. Yisrael Isser was without any question a solid rabbinic scholar. He was very fluent in Hebrew at the highest level, and it makes sense that he would have had a smicha from the chief rabbi of his hometown. But who knows? Unless we see the original, we must treat the unverified smicha translation as potentially fake. The other smicha is much more obscure. It is signed by Rabbi Yaakov Aryeh Eisenzweig, who was a Zion in Warsaw and also head of the local smicha program in the rabbinical seminary. If I'm perfectly frank, this smicha has to be a fake, as it mentions that Yisrael Isser was a community rabbi in Preshbul for several years, which makes no sense whatsoever.
You can take it.
So, unless Yisrael Isser got Rabbi Eisenzweig to write a false letter, unless he managed to do that somehow, and we don't have the original, so we can't be sure, it is more than likely that Yisrael Isser made this one up. I mentioned earlier that Yisrael Isser claimed when he arrived in America that he'd been staying with his uncle in Preshbul, Bratislava, and in several adverts that promoted him as the Koznitzer Chernobyl Rebbe, his residence in Preshbul is mentioned, probably because he wanted to attract Jews who originated in the Austro-Hungarian Empire to attend his Shabbat gigs. And so, perhaps that's where he got the idea to add Preshburg to his resume for the smicha. Who knows? His motives in this instance are lost in the mists of time. I have another couple of odds and ends to tidy up before I conclude. First, Yisrael Isser's fourth son, David Twersky, who was born in New York in 1931. He was a rabbi and an educator in New Jersey for decades, and was buried there when he passed away in January 2020. Here is an article about him from August 1960, when he was appointed head of school at Hillel Academy in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. I saw online that the author, Joshua Braff, has written a blog about his experiences at Hillel Academy, Perth Amboy. And I just want to share a couple of lines because it is really quite amusing. They say, write what you know. My first novel is about a yeshiva boy who leaves his religious education to attend a public school in suburban New Jersey. I drew from my own personal memories of a building in Perth Amboy called Hillel Academy, a place that was so ill prepared to teach that it was torn down a few years after I left. As he goes on in the same vein, look it up. It's a funny piece. Another important point, Yisrael Isser's Sefer Ein Yisrael was not a complete work. He divided it into three topics. This is the manuscript of it here, and Emunah. I have the manuscript here. In this fourth section, Yisrael Issa shows his fluency in medieval Jewish philosophy and quotes extensively from Moreh Nevuchim, Kuzari, Ber Hashem, and Korim, which I have to say are not sporim that are regularly quoted by Hasidic rabbis, or even
Thank you, Joby.
by Hasidic rabbis. Which brings me to my final point, also about his Sefer. I found it curious that he doesn't regularly quote Ramchal or Moshe Chaim Luzzatto anywhere in his Sefer. It's a Sefer on Machshava, and Ramchal is the master of Machshava. I don't think I need to tell you that Ramchal is quoted in so many Sforim of the 20th century that deal with philosophical, Kabbalistic topics, probably in all of them. That there's a good reason Ramchal is not quoted in Yisrael Issa Sefer. Do you know why? Because there are countless instances where Sefer Einei Yisrael directly plagiarizes Daf Doc by Ramchal. Yeah, Yisrael Issa passes off Ramchal's work as if it's his own. These are just a few pages of examples. Take a look. Einei Yisrael is in Rashi script, and Daf Doc is in the square letters, literally. It is exactly the same, word for word. I'd like to thank the Baker Street Irregular, who wishes to remain nameless, who did the work for me and put this document together. Just so you know, there's plenty more. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I guess once you are a Goynei Das, it doesn't stop with changing your surname. It extends to everything else as well. Well, that just about concludes the curious tale of the Koznitz Chernobyl Rebbe of New York, Yisrael Issa HaKohen Schwartz, a.k.a. Rabbi Yisrael Twersky. I have much more to say about him, including numerous gems from his correspondence archives, which I have here in my Judaica collection. Maybe one day I'll get to it all. But in the meantime, thank you so much for watching or listening and for being part of my Jewish History Chevron. Hopefully, I'll be back soon with another episode. And don't forget, keep your eyes open for good stories.
Hello. Hey
Hello.
guys.
Harold. Hi, Harold.
Hello.
Yeah, I got a new computer here. I'm trying to.
Okay.
Always something.
Okay, well.
Never a dull moment.
Well, we hear you, so that's the main thing, right? And you can hear us, so.
Yeah, let me turn it off and turn it on again.
A priest goes into the Williamsburg and he says, I see them, but I don't know where they are. I see them, but I can't hear them. So that says your computer, if you can see yeah, gotta get that.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening.
Good evening.
Oh, Ches.
Tav Ches 28. So, Bisman Shehein Stumin v'lo Bisman Shehein Mufarashim. We're talking about if a father separated money that was not designated. It might work for his son. Talmud Lomer b'Karbono, the Karbono who yotzev any yotzev b'Karbono. The pasuk excludes that possibility that he has to be makri, even money, not just an animal, but even money. Yachol lo yitzeh b'Moshe hifrish. Fine. The son cannot be yotze with money. Afilu min hakala lakala min hachamor lachamura. Even if they were operating with the same sin. We talked about a kala being a chatas that you bring for, let's say, swearing falsely, which is a sliding scale chatas, versus a chatas that you have to bring when you eat chaylev or dam, which is more chamor. Fine. Even if they're the same sin, the son can't use money. But maybe but if the father designated an animal, and that would work even not for the same sin. No, the korban has to be for the particular chet. A chatas behema for chaylev or dam, a different chatas for the kala. I might think that if a father had been
Hi, son. Sorry.
If a father had actually separated an animal for his chet, and the son has the same chet. Now, a chaylev sin, you bring a chatas. A dam, if you eat dam, you also bring a chatas. They're both chomer. And I might think shekenim hifrish beim ala chaylev evil adam ala dam evil chaylev. That's not going to work. Lo moal, there's no me'ilah, because you can't take a tamim animal and take it out l'chulin. And lo kiper, and there's no kapar because the animals have not been designated for the same sin. But maybe money that has been designated for his korban. No matter what, whether it's the same sin in a chamor lakal and a kal chamor different. The halacha is, if you ate dam and you separated money, you can use that money to bring a chatas chaylev. Sharei Mol the keeper. Tamad Lomer al Chatoso. Ad Shei Korban L'Shem Chato. Even the money has to be the same. If you designate it for dam, you can't use it for a sin for chen. So this is the Baraisa. Tani mias b'veima. Whatever you want to say, the Baraisa mentioned that you cannot use an animal that was separated by the father, the son can't use it. Now, we tried to say that an animal that's a balmum is like money, which you could use. My love, afilu balas mum. More says lo tmima. We're talking about tamim animals that could be used for the mizbeh. So aval balas mum mai. So what are you going to say? An animal of a balmum, because tumadami would be like money. So my area the Tony Moshe for Shaviv, listening balas mum. Why didn't the Baraisa mention balas mum? More says achanami. It's like mentioning money. The lamai chazil it may. To may I know most. It's the same thing. There's no raya against Rav Nachman that a behema of a balas mum is treated like undifferentiated money. Mishnah. So, as a continuation of the prior Mishnah, where a wife made a neder to become a nazir, and she separated korbanos, and then the husband annulled the neder, so the previous Mishnah dealt with what we do. Now let's say nizrek alea echad ben adamim. Let's say one of those animals that she had designated had got to the process where they shechted it, they collected the blood, and they even did the zrika on the mizbeach. Eino yachol lahafir. Okay, that's the cutoff point. The husband has no ability to annul the neder anymore. It's too late. She's already got kapar. She could take a haircut. She could drink wine. The Nezirus is over, according to the Tanakhama. He says it's even one step before. You don't need to do zrika sadam ala mizbeach. Even shechting the animal is the final processing, and he can't annul it anymore. That's talking about a nazir that completed his 30 days b'tahara. He did not become tameh, and he's bringing his final karbanos, chatas the oil and the shlamim. Let's say on day 15 of a Nezirus, the woman became tameh. So now that uproots the Nezirus. You wipe out all the days that she counted. You have to have 7 days where you get sprinkled paradum on the 3rd and 7th day. On the 8th day, you bring korbanos that a tameh dik and nazir brings, which is a chatas ola and an osha. Now, here, if you're shechting and doing zrika sadam, you're fair. The husband has the right to annul the nedor no matter what during this process. Shuhu yachol omer efshi be'isha menuvelas. I don't want my wife that doesn't drink wine, and I'm allowed to be annuller in the door. Reb Meir omer af b'tiklachas hatahara yofer. He disagrees with the Tanakhama and even Rabbi Akiva that even after they have been makriv one of the korbanos, the husband can be yofer. I don't want my wife to take a haircut. I don't want her not to be able to drink wine. Okay.
Do we say these are all talking about Biyom Shemoah, right? Beyond that, everything that takes place right there. That's the day he finds out about her. He
Correct,
didn't know. He didn't know before.
correct.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
You only have 24 hours. For the
Right. So
husband.
so he sees. Yeah. Okay. That's when he finds out, when all these things happen that same day. Okay.
Masnisen, the Lok Rav Eliezer. Our mission is not like Rav Eliezer. Rav Eliezer, Ha'omar tiglachas me'akeves. Rav Eliezer says that taking a haircut is what finalizes the process, and you can drink wine again. But the korbanah is either the shchita or the zrika doesn't do it. So kiven de lo gilcha sir b'chamra. So since the wife hasn't taken a haircut, she's still prohibited to drink wine. The kiven de islay nivel, and this is disgusting for the husband. Matzi mefer. He would be able, according to Eliezer, the husband would be able to annul even all the way up until she takes the haircut. Ubaha pligi. And our Tana Kab and Rabbi Kiva don't hold of Rabbi Eliezer. Hanadi don Savar. Kivin di Izdar Kale Adam. Once there's Zrika Saddam on her behalf. La'alter Shari B'chamer. She's at that point permitted to drink wine. And Vahalasli Nivel. So at that point, there's no reason for the husband to be mefer anymore because there's no nivel. Rabbi Kiva Savar Filu Ishtachitas Ashchitas Abeima Ene Yachal Hafer. Once you shech the animal, he can't annul. Why? Misum Hev should catch him. If he annuls it, they don't need these korbanos. We don't. You can't be mafsid kodshim like that. Maskil Rav Zei, Rav Amai. I have a solution, says Rav Zei. Lizrok daman shelo lishman. By korbanos, if you when you do zrika sadam for a shlomim, you have to have in mind you're doing the zrika for a shlomim. If a shlomim you have in mind chatas, then the bailim don't get credit for that korban. The animal is kosher to eat, shelo lishma, but you don't get credit. So therefore, the Gemara says, "Lizrok daman shelo lishma." What's wrong? Let's just do the zrika without lishma. V'yatir basar b'achila, and there won't be hefsek kotche. Milo Tanya, didn't we learn? Kivsei atzeres. There were two lambs that were offered on Chag HaShavuos. Like all other korbanos, when you shech them, you have to have them in mind for the kivsei atzeres. If you shechted them, sheshachton shelo lishman, oh sheshachton lifnei zmanim, you shechted them erev Shavuos or after Shavuos, right? Lachar zman. The din is hadam yizarik. You can do zrika. Habasri yachel, and it's kosher. Imaisa Shabbos lo yizarik. Now, if it's Shabbos, you can't eat the meat because you can't cook it. But you're doing a malacha that's not needed. The imzorak, but let's say you did it anyways. You can put the innards on the mizbech at night when you're allowed to burn. So the Gemara's question is, why don't we let them shechtet shelo lishman? Amri, there are three korbanos that a nazir brings: chatas, ola, or shlomim. So the Gemara's answer is either shachat, oila, shlomim, or chanami. And ola or shlomim, if you shech them shelo lishma, they're okay. Elach ma'askinon, tigon sheshochet chatas bereisha. Problem is, if you shechted a chatas first, if you shech the chatas shelo lishma, it's puzzle, and then you'll have hefsed kotshim. Kidisnanim gilech alachas mishloshton yotza. If she took a haircut after one of the animals had been offered, either the ola or the shlam and chatas, she's yotze. So by chatas, it wouldn't work. The Mishnah says this whole thing is only applicable by a nazir who's bringing the korbanos as a tohor nazir. Aval betiklachas tuma, the korbanos that a nazir became tomei has to bring yofer. At any point, the husband can annul. I don't want a wife who can't drink wine. I don't want my wife to have to take a haircut and become bald. So I can annul no matter what. What is the Tanakama Seder of Meir? Tanakama Arnalach, Efshar b'pe'anachri, she can wear a wig. She can wear a wig. So there's no nivul. Reb Meir said, but a woman sweats under her wig. And he's not happy about that. So he can annul the nether because of that. Mishnah. Ha'ish madiras beno benazir. A father can have his minor son become a nazir. But the mother can't do it for her son. Ketza. And if the father makes such a neder, but the son, Gilech, takes a haircut, he's showing he doesn't want to be a nazir. Or Shegilchu Kroivav, or relatives of the son shaved him. Micha or Shemichu Kroivav, he protested, or the relatives protested. So the neder goes away. Okay. What if he already had pre-designated animals for his korbanos? This is analogous to the previous Mishnah with the wife. Achatas tamus, the korban chatas has to be put to death. Ha'oila tikar voila. The animal that was the oila can be offered as an oila. Donative, shlamim yikravu shlamim, a donative shlamim. Nechalim liyamecha, they have to be eaten like a shalmei nazir one day. Vein tun lechem, you don't have to bring bread, which normally are brought with shalmei nazir. Hayulo mostumi, let's say there was undifferentiated money, so all the money yiplu nadova, like we learned last Mishnah. Most mufrashim. Let's say there was $100 for chatas, $100 for an ola, $100 for shlamim. To make chatas, the money for chatas has to be dumped into this ocean. You can't benefit from it, but there's no me'ila because there's no nadir. It's not a korban anymore. To make oila yaviu oila, because it can be used as a donative korban. So there is no me'ila by shlamim because after zrika you can eat it. You have to eat it in one day like shalmei nazir. And they don't require the breads that are normally brought with shalmei nazir. So the Gemara says ish in aval ish alone. The husband, the father, can make his minor child a nazir, but not the mother. Why? My time. It's halacha Moshe Sinai. Only the father, not the mother. Rav Yosef, Rabbi Chanina, Reish Lakish kedei lechancho b'mitzvos. It's part of chinuch habanim, and only a father has the din of chinuch. The ish is chayiv l'chanech es bno b'mitzvahs. So therefore, this is part of the chinuch process. Okay. Tomorrow will be Daf Yomi 7:30, Tuesday, and the Tzurba will be at 8:00.
Go
I
ahead.
got, and, okay, we'll talk with everybody tomorrow.
Very good.
Right. Square.